We're working on just on May 1st. Okay, we have Councilman Betts.
As I remember the discussion at the last council meeting when these minutes were continued, there were two items that were discussed in closed session, and my understanding was that these would come back and reflect that were discussed. As I look at the first page of the May 1st, 2012 minutes, we show closed session discussion, public employee performance evaluation discussed. We did discuss a second item which is not reflected on here, and that item was a discussion regarding the amount of compensation for the city attorney. That item must be reported out of closed session. I think it's far better, even though that discussion should never have taken place in closed session. It's far better that we let that properly be reflected in the minutes rather than compounding the original error.
Without disclosing what went on in closed session, I tend to disagree with the interpretation of what was discussed in closed session. So how do we correct that action? It's closed session. You can't talk outside of closed session, and I don't agree with your interpretation of the discussion. So where do we go from there, folks?
There was only one item on the agenda, public employee performance evaluation. That's the agenda item. So when you go into closed session, that's what you discuss. You must have had a bad day, or I must have had a bad day, because we basically had some other discussions. And the reality of the whole thing, the whole meeting started with us discussing other council members and how much time they were spending with the city attorney and the cost that it was costing the city. Now, we went into a big discussion on that.
So, Madam Mayor?
That wasn't even on the agenda.
Mr. City Attorney?
All due respect to Councilmember Sanchez. So, when we start to talk about specific content of the closed session, we are bordering on a violation of the Brown Act itself by revealing closed session items. I can see Mr. Betts shaking his head. What I believe is the reason for the shaking of the head. The Brown Act does allow a member of the body to express an opinion that there was some action that was inappropriate in closed session. I think it would be inappropriate to engage in a discussion about whether that, about what the specifics were. Opinions have been expressed. I believe that's it. But I do want to caution Mr. Sanchez, Madam Mayor, that getting into details of what was discussed in that closed session is inappropriate. I understand your opinion that there were two items discussed. I agree with the mayor that there weren't two items discussed, and I'm happy to talk to you or to the district attorney or whomever else I need to about that.
May I continue? Well, the second part of that meeting, as we went on into the meeting, is that we were on task to discuss the public employee performance evaluation. But then we veered off, as Councilmember Betts had stated. We veered off to all of a sudden now discussing a pay increase. That's what we veered off to. And then we went into an informal vote. And all I'm doing is putting out for the record that I abstained from all that discussion. And I didn't participate in that informal vote. And I think that, part of us taking the oath of office is that, we will stay within the law. And basically, we extended our conversation beyond what we should have. But my due diligence
just simply not
is to go ahead and just state what I had to state, and that's what I've done, and I'm done with my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Mattis?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is obviously a show by two council members. Neither one of them are correct. Mr. Sanchez just perjured himself by saying what he said, period. The council took the proper actions, followed the law, and were advised by the city manager and city attorney on how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Betts?
Okay, disagreeing with the city attorney regarding what the Brown Act does and does not permit regarding discussion in closed session. The Brown Act does not permit discussion of compensation in a closed session called to evaluate an employee's performance or for any other reason under Government Code Section 54957. The Brown Act does not permit face-to-face discussion or negotiations between an employee and a legislative body concerning the employer's compensation in any instance whatsoever. The Brown Act does not require members of legislative bodies present in a closed session to stay silent about violations of the Act that they witness in closed session, and does not permit retaliation against those who speak up in such circumstances. Now, if you're suggesting that no other item was discussed in closed session, then there's no reason for admonishment from you that two council members are up here talking about what took place in closed session. The Brown Act says that we are free to discuss anything that takes place in closed session that shouldn't have taken place there. And most certainly discussion took place regarding the compensation for the city attorney. We were all there. We all know what took place. A mistake was made. It's better to air that out now, get it corrected, and make sure the record accurately reflects what took place in closed session.
I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Betts just said, Madam Mayor, up to a point at the very end. I believe that Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Betts have every right to express the opinions that they've just expressed.
Councilman Sanchez.
Once that meeting started, and I've only been on here 6 months, and I pretty much can read an agenda item when I see it. But when I see a meeting starting and we're going in a whole separate direction, not even what the agenda item is, quite frankly, we're talking about something that's not on the agenda. This is pretty elementary school here. So all I'm doing is explaining to you all what was done without people thinking correctly. I abstained from the very beginning when this whole action took place in closed session. From the very beginning, I said, I'm stepping back and abstaining totally from any further conversation that we're going to be having. Now, you all continued, and I said, fine, I can sit here and I can listen, and I'll just see what's going to transpire here. And it is my due diligence as a council member to then follow the oath of office. And I will not sit on this dais, and I will not sit in closed session and not follow the Brown Act. And that's the fact. But at the end of the day, we all have to choose how we're going to proceed with our own actions. And that's what I have done. And for the record, I abstained from everything that took place at that meeting. Thank you.
Councilman Betts.
And for the record, I objected to the discussion as it was taking place, and I received a concurrence from the city attorney that the discussion was out of order. The discussion continued. It came to an informal vote. The presentation of an informal salary survey that was conducted to justify the basis for the discussion of increasing the city attorney's salary. Most certainly there was an error made. I cannot vote yes on these minutes unless they are corrected to accurately reflect what was discussed. This is not a case of Councilman Sanchez and I digging into the Brown Act and playing lawyers. We've sought counsel on this. We trust that judgment. We've been advised what's the proper course, and we are following that. We had this problem before on a previous council. Former city manager Jerry Hansen's contract was discussed, approved, and voted on in closed session. To learn that lesson, I'm not going to repeat that same mistake and be up here as having participated in the same thing that brought so much trouble on the city.
Again, it's simply not true. It's fabricated. You've twisted the truth in the words that were said in that closed session. To say the situation is anywhere close to Jerry Hansen is just wrong. Call the question, Madam Mayor.
Before I call the question, I'm just going to have one comment.
I'm back at the dais again.
I call for the question, Madam Mayor.
Okay, call for the question.
Let's not go through that again. We have other people that want to speak.
Not on this one.
I see people in the queue.
I'm in the queue again.
I see Councilwoman Pai in the queue, Mayor Pro Tem Pai.
Well, point of order.
Nice in the sandbox?
Point of order, Mr. City Attorney. During my comments, I called for the question. Can we call for the question, or do they have to continue to take the people in the queue?
Strict rule is to end debate, to call the question essentially, requires a supermajority vote of the council. If the question is to be called, someone would have to second Mr. Mattis's motion, Madam Mayor, and a vote would be taken to end debate and call the vote. Would require a vote, 4 votes.
We have a motion and a second. He's just calling the question.
But the question then subsequently is, should the council force the end of the debate? Robert's rules essentially encourage and provide for full debate so that any question can get its full hearing.
I'll retract my motion to call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to ask all of the council members, we can debate whether or not what someone recalled and what someone else recalled. But please, let's not attack each other personally.
Okay, Councilman Sanchez.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with what Mayor Pro Tem Pai said. But the reality of the whole thing is that the battle lines are being drawn by Councilmember Mattis making points that totally are attacking. You can't say someone's perjured themselves. I mean, we decided we were going to run things in a professional manner. And nobody started this but Councilor Mattis. And that's the reality. Now, at the end of the day, I can guarantee you, when all is said and done, whether you want to report this to any authority, any legal bodies, it's all going to come back, and it's basically going to say that what we have done here is the right thing. And then at that time, I can look you in the eye and tell you that I was right.
Okay, I'm just going to say one final comment, and then I will call the question. My recollection is that the entire discussion was relative to the evaluation of the employee, Ruben Duran. Now I would like to call the question, and please vote. Motion carries 3-2. Sanchez and Betts voting no.